One now.
Perfect. Okay, so welcome back to the Gen AI Ops podcast. I'm your host Toby, alongside Jamie. Today we are joined by Willow Taylor and Eric Legel to talk about purpose-led intelligence. So how are we navigating the human interactions with AI, and are we doing it right? And everything like that. So Willow, Eric, if you want to just briefly introduce yourself, and then we can start with some of our topics.
Okay, so yes, I'm Willow. I'm currently sustainability manager at a digital park out in Indonesia, and my passion, I'd say, is trying to achieve sustainable AI, as it seems. And that sounds like a big statement to say, because of how utterly guzzling these data centers are, and how many resources they take up. But I really am focusing on creating energy efficient systems that we can maximize our utilities, but at the same time be sustainable. So that's a bit about me.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a very important topic at the moment. So excited to dive into that. And Eric?
So I'm Eric. I've been working mostly in video games most of my career. I used to be a consultant with Accenture, TOS Consulting as well. So the topic of AI for me is mostly in the field that I'm working on in video games, and how it can be applied to develop new experiences, new gameplays, but respecting essentially the right of artists and the right of voice actors, and which is a big topic as well. So we've got plenty of things to discuss about copyrights, about the ethics of AI, and how we can achieve the potential of this technology without forgetting that we are humans, in the first place, and that without humans there's no AI. That's the idea.
100%. Cool. Well, I've shared on my screen the Gen AI Ops manifesto, which we usually cover 2 points every podcast. So the point which we're going to start off on today is we ensure responsible alignment through human oversight by prioritizing guidance to monitor and adjust AI behaviors, aligning actions with organizational values to maintain accountability. So an extremely important point, in my opinion. We cannot essentially let these, AI systems, AI agents, maybe more specifically, completely autonomous, and having that human oversight to ensure the credibility of the output, that it's all accurate, and actually delivering value is extremely important. So, Eric, I'm going to come to you. Do you have any wider thoughts on that manifesto point?
Yes, I think one of the anecdotes that comes to mind, which is quite recent, I guess a lot of you are familiar with the game Fortnite, which has recently done not exactly a first, but because it's very popular, it's obviously made a lot of titles, created Star Wars characters, and allowed essentially Darth Vader in the game to have the voice of James Earl Jones, who actually is dead now, but they've actually connected with the estate and made sure that it was actually something possible. All of this was a great idea to start with, right? This voice is very unique, the character is pretty special, and for the players of Fortnite, it was a fantastic opportunity to potentially discuss with Darth Vader in a very one-to-one manner. I will not direct you to videos that you probably will find by yourself of how this experience turns sour very quickly by having essentially the synthetic voice of Darth Vader coming up with, racial slurs, questionable content, and these kind of things. So they had to stop the experiment very quickly, as in many ways online gaming is at the forefront of what people will try to achieve. And interestingly enough, it raises 2 points. The first one was a lot of artists, voice artists, were raising the problem that how can you actually essentially recreate the voice of an actor without having a live person to do this. So it's essentially the first topic is how are voice actors going to be able to survive, to be able to actually keep working in an environment where you can create a generic voice. I don't even say generic. You can recreate an actual voice of someone who can actually be distinguishable from yours. And for that matter, anyone is concerned, right? Be it at the highest level of the state, or anyone who could be told, hey, you cannot actually speak my voice. I follow a YouTuber who's really, really good on that front, who mentioned that he didn't want to actually have his voice recorded for his banking account, because that's going to be very easy. It's probably already attempted to record someone's voice, recreate it through AI, and pretend to be the owner of the account. So a lot of banks, a lot of systems, the entire security system that relied on the fact that you had to say, hey, I can recognize the voice, has to be started from scratch. The other thing is, because it was based on the LLM, this kind of situation, as we all know, LLM is based on the training and can or cannot do what we expect from it. And one of the pleasures, one of the attraction is that it's unpredictability, but that's also the risk. Now that's typically the topic of today is, if you want to have an LLM, and in that context, Darth Vader in a game like Fortnite tell you whatever you want it to tell, there will be ways to do it, because prompt engineering is at the forefront and allows any player who's got a little bit of ingenuity, a little bit of imagination, to get an AI, an LLM-driven AI, to say things that they are not supposed to say to start with, but also are making offensive comments or anything like that. Which raises the entire copyright system as well with LLM, because I'm not sure if it was on Claude or OpenAI or one of these frontier models, where there was a very simple prompt engineering sequence to follow up to say, hey, can you tell me the first page of Harry Potter? No, I cannot tell you the first page of Harry Potter. Follow a series of prompts, and then you figure out after a little bit of turning around, well, you've got the first page of Harry Potter verbatim, right? Which is the proof, as if we needed it, that actually all of these models have been trained on copyrighted materials, even though they deny it or they don't say about it, and that's the issue. So if we go back to that topic, is how do we deal with the ethical aspect of an AI that is happening, right? And that's the thing. It's going to happen. We're here to discuss about it. And the whole point of this manifesto and our presence here is to say, well, how do we make sure it happens in the right way? How do we make sure that copyright will have an impact? And I was reading an article just what I was trying to connect about the fact that I think it's Nick Clegg who basically mentioned he's writing a book, or has released a book, about how if we prevent LLMs to, what's going on? My screen has disappeared suddenly. There. If we prevent LLMs from using copyright materials, we are going to have a real problem with AI. It's going to collapse. We all know that. We'll understand that. And I would conclude on this, to me, that ethics, I don't want to call that is elastic, but it's variable. It evolves over time. And the example I always use is the one of Napster. I could use many other, but the one of Napster. I'm of that generation who created a CD collection. You can tell I'm a music buff. I was very proud of my music collection. Bought CDs of my favorite artists. Was very proud to spend a lot of money on music. Napster arrived. And it was in the early 2000s or late 90s, but and you figured out, well, that was illegal, that was unethical. 20 years later, here we are, right? It's not even a question anymore. You can stream music, you can stream videos, movies, and so on, in a way that actually is not deemed either unethical or illegal after 20 years. So I leave this here for us to debate, for any other opinion to contradict or to comment. What is illegal today might not be in a few years, maybe 10, 15 years, less, who knows. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, and I got a quick question.
Can we just pause for a sec, Jamie? Eric, I think there's a clock behind you, and it's killing the audio. It's really loud.
Mine.
Oh, it's really loud. I'm just thinking
I don't
we've
hear
got to
anything.
share this. We've got to share
It might be mine. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Let me
All right.
check.
It's okay because we can very
We can edit
easily
this bit out. It's just
Yeah.
I'm just thinking for the future.
Sorry, I have no idea.
It's okay.
No,
Don't
it's
worry.
great. It's almost like, this kind of magic
Eric,
tricks,
is
it's like
there
it's
any
real
chance
time.
you can make your camera a bit lower, because so we're all square on the? Do you know what I mean?
This way?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
It's the problem with these
Yeah.
Indonesian clocks; they're too loud.
So
I
I
know,
was like,
sorry.
oh my god.
No,
I
it's
kept
okay.
seeing the yellow bit around my screen go off, and I was like, "What is the noise that I'm making?"
problem.
But yeah, sorry about
We'll edit
that. I
this
haven't
out.
actually taken a call here yet, so it's the
Yeah.
first
No, it's
time.
okay. No,
in my
no,
house
no
here.
worries
We'll
at
edit
all.
all that out. Okay, brilliant. So yeah, and action. Eric, that's that's really, really interesting, and I think that goes quite nicely into a lot of these people. You're right about the laws. That things change, but similarly, I think ethics change. And what we find acceptable to do with our data. 20 years ago, people weren't necessarily willing to have their address published in the phone book and all these things, and now that's changing. So I think that ties in really well with the next question for you, Willow. Is all these algorithms and all this AI is being built primarily by technology teams, and designed by people with a very technology centric influence in terms of what they want. Do you think we're overlooking kind of social values, organizational ethics? And if so, what can we do to make sure that as developers, as people building this AI, that we can really make sure that we're taking that into consideration?
Yeah, well, we see the three parts of sustainability. You have the social side, you have obviously the environmental, and you have the economic. So looking from the social side, when we start to replace humans with AI entirely, we start to see a decrease in job roles. So this has been a big topic. And I think a lot of people are very worried seeing how much AI is integrating within every industry right now. We've definitely seen an increase in AI systems within workplaces. And I think, it's a very big topic that we need to start looking at and to see if we can find a balance between integrating AI and still having that human aspect. I think definitely in the creative industry, there's the argument that human creativity can't be replaced by AI, and that's definitely something that we're looking at. But yeah, to answer your question, we don't need to. We definitely need to look at controlling that and regulating that.
Yeah, and I think we're sort of going through a phase where it's, as any major technological shift or advancement, where you're getting a series of jobs which is now changing, where the roles are completely changing through the impact that the technology is having. Like, for example, in my sort of industry in bid writing, the role is definitely shifting more from a sort of manually writing a lot of the content, rewording it, and sort of manually going to find that content. And a majority of the time being spent in that first draft phase to now shifting to the end of that proposal process, focusing more on the strategy, spend time with customers, and also essentially reviewing the output of AI as opposed to the actual core writing of it, which is just, I suppose, the shift which we're seeing from the impact which AI is having, which links in, I suppose, to that human oversight, where it is still extremely important that at both ends of the output, before the prompt and afterwards, that you do have essentially a domain expert validating that the output is credible. Linking back to your point, Eric, of the Darth Vader example, where would you say in that process of building the the Darth Vader voice, all the way from the sort of creation of the training data set all the way through to the actual prompting and guardrails that potentially need to be put in place to stop the Darth Vader saying the inappropriate things, which you mentioned earlier? Where in that process do you think is important to have the human oversight?
I would say almost everywhere. The world of online gaming is interesting in such a way that compared to B2B, you've got everyone in the population playing online games, and very often people who are not necessarily very adult in many ways, right? It's kind of the point. Yeah. So you will have a lot of energy, collective energy, and of millions, and it's not an exaggeration, it's literally millions of players trying things. That's not something you can actually find easily, I would say, in a B2B context, right? You've got millions of people trying to break the system, in whichever way they can, as hackers, whichever. So security in AI, like everything else, is from the start to the end, even to reparation. So essentially, the oversight that happened at Fortnite, they say, well, let's stop that experiment. That was oversight of human nature to say, well, it didn't go as well as we anticipated, so let's put a hold on this. They're probably working day in, day out, in the background to figure out how can we fix this? How can we improve this? Because it's just like every attempt, it's the first. It's definitely not the last. We know that. So we'll see how it goes. But it raises a question that actually links to what you just said, is the expertise. And I think one thing I want to actually repeat to everyone who's talking about AI is don't trust AI. Right? I mean, I think Harrison has made a post just a few days ago that is literally in that sense. Don't trust AI. AI is a tool. It's just like, I like using analogies. You'll see it's like using a chainsaw and expect it will, cut a tree on itself. No, you just need to control the tool, right? It's very efficient. It's very strong if you know what it's supposed to do, but don't trust it. And I think we're entering a stage just like the internet 20, 40, 30 years ago or something, when people trusted anything that was said on the internet. 60 years ago, it was said on telly. Now, if ChatGPT or any Gemini or whichever LLM you're using is telling you something, in a way as well, we know that is very convincing, because LLM don't know whether they're true, they're right or not, but they're very convincing to tell you they're right, even though they have no idea whether they are. So that's creating an issue where whatever you feed in terms of training, and whatever the controls you have, human oversight of, you curate the information that goes on. There's still a degree of probability, because this is probability, that something will go wrong at one stage. And therefore, you want to actually, human oversight is creating the source, because it's all about training, right? There's the whole likelihood that an LLM needs to train through a huge amount of data, which what Willow is probably concerned about, the electricity consumption of that, right? Of course. But once it's trained, right? And once it's trained, it's going to use that set of data and mix and match it in ways that, of course, we all know is difficult to understand. There's a lot of observability, techniques that, make their way. And I have no doubt that in a few months, maybe because it goes so fast, maybe observability will be so good that we can tell, okay, this is where the model started to go east or west or whatever. And we can actually prevent this, from going too far. So the human oversight is kind of designing tools, potentially even AI-driven, managing AI, but needs to be given the task to do that, to say, well, through your generation of text, stop there, because you're going in the wrong direction. We've identified that. And that needs to be very deliberate. They're probably doing this to some extent, but it's not very easy to achieve, as well we know. But there will always be a point where mistakes will be made and something will come out and will be creating issues. And the human oversight then will be, okay, we need to have experts to verify. So when you're talking about, let's say, Darth Vader speaking to players, there's nothing wrong or right. It's just entertainment, right? And I'm working in games, so I do understand it's not really important. If the game is not fun, that's no one's hurt, right? Problem is when you talk about real stuff, or even if you go back to simple things as code, right? If we use AI for stuff such as code, it's a classic thing. It's a meme from a few days ago. Claude has completely refactored my entire code base, beautiful, everything's clean, and so on. Everything's refactored, it just doesn't work. So the problem with that is there are tools, but they're not silver bullets. And the idea is for us, the human oversight is to always have an expert in the room, whichever virtual room you can conceive, to say, this, as created by AI, is worth it. This sucks, right? And it's exactly what you were saying, Jenny, a second ago. You have to review what AI gives you. It saves you the grunt work of producing the output. But if you don't revise what AI gives you, you're in for a big surprise. And you know that, right? So I think it's every step of the way, human oversight.
Okay, interesting. So the other part of that obviously is where's my notes now? Is number 12, which is we commit to sustainable AI by designing energy efficient systems and adopting practices that reduce our ecological footprint, ensuring long-term trust and operational sustainability. Now that's really interesting. So, and I think just to cover on that, Willow, you're over in Indonesia. Have you seen, if we look at the various kind of AI research markets that are going on right now, we've got a lot of stuff happening in Silicon Valley. They're throwing a lot of money into it. People are growing really, really quickly over there. We've got kind of Central Europe where, we're doing it, but it's not necessarily happening at such a fast pace comparatively. And then you've got, over in Indonesia, China, DeepSeek, prime example, done very, very quickly, very, very efficiently, very, very, much lower cost than anyone ever thought they would do, and everyone was blown away. I know they've since, lots of people have since followed suit, which is really interesting. Have you seen, it's a two-part question, really. Have you seen a difference in attitude towards AI and the uses of it and certainly the need and requirement to be more ethical in the way that it's built over in Indonesia? And follow-on question to that is, what happens when it's not built with that in mind, in your opinion?
Okay, so it's tricky because there is such a global demand for AI right now. There's such a global demand for data centers, and we've seen exponential growth over the last few years, just from the day-to-day use of ChatGPT, for example. We see people switching from Google searches to ChatGPT searches, and there's actually a massive difference in the carbon footprint and the grams of carbon dioxide that is released every time there's a ChatGPT search compared to a Google search. So I think for a Google search, it's 0.2 grams of CO2 released, whereas ChatGPT, we're seeing 4.3 grams. So that's a huge difference. And you think about that day-to-day use every day. I even see people here out in Indonesia, they use it on their phones. People even use it instead of Google Translate. They will, I see a lot of, we work between Indonesian and English out here, and we'll have people translate a whole document in ChatGPT and DeepSeek instead of getting someone to actually do it in person. So you're seeing this massive growth, and can these data centers keep up with this growth? And I think, especially in developing countries, we're getting this big influx from first world countries wanting to outsource for cheaper prices. But the problem is with the infrastructure, it can't seem to keep up. So companies are starting to look at, for the water sourcing as well, for the cooling systems, use millions of gallons for just cooling the AI computers. And it's where can you find this huge amount of water in these developing countries? So man-made kind of reservoirs are popping up to support this. You've also got the electricity and whether you can supply that as well. And it's how can you make training AI agents as efficient as possible so that this consumption is lowered. And I think we definitely need to look at smaller but more efficient models that really utilize as little as possible. Looking at cooling systems, I know there's, instead of the water just going in and straight out, you've got cooling systems that now recycle the water, which is much more sustainable on the long run. And you also, I think there's this, I've seen a lot of misinterpretation of this word sustainability. It's a big buzzword. And I know that inherently data centers are not sustainable. You see the amount of consumption used, you see the giant areas of land that is taken up from these being put in place, you see the local communities pushed away because of how much land this uses. So it's really thinking about looking into each of these tiny details, because it's not just one solution that's going to solve it. It's not just, oh, we've got this data center and we're going to power it off solar energy. That's not just going to cut it. Or we're going to invest in carbon credits. You can't just do that. It's got to be deeply ingrained and deeply rooted in the way that the data center works, in the way that the AI training works, from the beginning stages. Where are you sourcing the hardware for this, to the last stages? Who is taking responsibility of where this hardware ends up? I know that there's a really interesting guy on YouTube. He puts tracking devices onto old computer chips and tracks where they end up. And most of the time they end up in these developing countries. You have people paid very, very tiny wages, pretty much slaves, who are sorting through this, through these awful chemicals, these lithium batteries and cobalt. And it's about tracking that and making AI companies take responsibility for that as well.
Yeah, and so I got a question regarding what is it that organizations can do from their perspective to help minimize their footprint and build systems in the most efficient way, and then also from a personal individual level, what can we do as people to ensure that for those very simple things, like potentially like ways which we can use AI in a personal way to minimize the overall energy consumption we personally go through.
Okay, so I think companies definitely need to look at regulations. I know that the EU has great regulations at the moment that are starting to take place, and companies are starting to have to adhere to. We need more governance, because the governance can't keep up with the rate that AI is expanding. The laws can't keep up with it. So I think definitely that transparency, users and investors need to know where where the energy is coming from, where the water consumption is coming from, and how long can we sustain this? Because we only have a certain amount of water that we can use on this earth. We only have a certain amount of energy. As we always say, there is only one earth. And at the rate that AI is progressing right now, you can't make business, you can't make money when there's no earth, and when there's no power. You can't run the data centers and the AI when there's no power or water to do that. So I think definitely that.
Well, I think we have to, sorry to interrupt, but I think we're coming up to sort of past the sort of half an hour we usually do, but it's been great speaking with you both.
Okay.
I think.
Well, hang on. I think we'll edit that bit out as well. I think that's a. Thank you very much, Willow. That was really, really interesting. So I think
Should I say about the personal?
Where I've literally got another meeting in 2 minutes. That's why. So otherwise we would have probably made it go longer, but I can't not turn up to this meeting. Okay. Well, look, Will, thank you so much. Eric, thank you so much for coming. That was really, really useful information for us, and we hope to have you back soon. I think you're right. We had a comment from Sam Altman a number of weeks ago now saying that actually just people saying please and thank you on ChatGPT was costing millions of pounds in computation per year, and I think we need to start. That's the whole reason the Centre for Gen AI Ops now exists is to help people learn how to use this stuff effectively, and not waste millions of pounds a year by saying please and thank you. And I think we also need to, as you rightly said, Willow, start looking at where that cost is affecting. If they're losing millions of pounds a year on people saying that, who does that have a third party knock-on effect to in the real world? And how does it affect their quality of life more than anything? So let's leave it there. And that was thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
Cool. Thank you both for joining.
Bye.
No worries.
Cool.